Hi, my name is Jessica Johnson, and this is a presentation as a conclusion for my class EDUW691. For this class, I focused on Wisconsin Teaching Standards 1. Teachers know the subjects that they're teaching, with special emphasis on the descriptor, creating meaningful learning experiences, and fostering the growth of student tools of inquiry. I also focused on WTS2, which is teachers know how children grow. The descriptor that I emphasized was encouraging students to assume responsibility for shaping their own learning tasks. I teach science to 8th grade students. I have 62 students that I teach 3 class periods for 44 minutes each day. I have 1 student with dyslexia, with other students ranging in ability level from grade 6 to advanced levels. Amongst my 3 class periods, the ability levels are very evenly spread out. The topic that I chose for this class was on test-taking strategies. My rationale for doing this is because I have 8th graders who are about 1 semester away from entering high school, and thus entering into greater instances of high-stakes testing and more difficult learning experiences. At the beginning of the school year, I gave students a survey asking them to let me know their preferred method of test taking. The vast majority of my students chose multiple choice test. Upon discussing this as a group, it was kind of an overarching comment that multiple choice tests are easy. However, as the school year continued to go on, I would have a small portion of multiple choice questions on the test, and students did not actually perform very well on these. Actually, the average for the first 2 tests was around 80% correct on each of the multiple choice sections. So, test-taking strategies in general was something that I wanted to focus on with my students in order to improve the critical thinking and problem-solving skills that I felt were lacking for students who were entering into high school. So my rationale for focusing on test-taking strategies was just prepare these students for those higher instances of high-stakes testing. So what I did to conduct a pre-test was I actually went to my 8th graders' other core teachers, and I compiled a list of 60 multiple choice questions that students had already been assessed on in the first month and a half of school. When I gave this pre-test to students, the average grade was a 65%, and this was all material that they had already been tested on. The median score was 62%. When discussing with the students why I had given them this test, they were shocked at their scores, 1, because they'd already been tested on this material, and 2, because they thought that they were very good at taking multiple choice tests. So when asking the students why they felt that they achieved the way that they did on this test, a big point of discussion was that sometimes it's difficult for them to even understand what the question is asking them to do. That there are vocabulary words that frequently appear that kind of muddle their understanding of the question. So another thing that I wanted to focus on in my research was how to implement the teaching of test-taking vocabulary and high-frequency testing language into my curriculum. So my goal for guiding my research was, how does implementing specific test prep strategies promote student learning, foster growth of student tools of inquiry, and ultimately affecting students' performance on assessments? According to the research that I found, between grade 6 and post-secondary education, so throughout college, multiple choice test is actually the preferred and most commonly used method of testing. 1, because it is easy to grade at the more advanced level, and 2, because if done correctly, these test questions are actually the type of test question that involves a higher order thinking instead of just recalling factual information. So because my students are in 8th grade, the research shows that 2 years prior to that, they already would have been exposed to these high-stakes tests in which they were expected to perform using multiple choice tests. According to this research, it's shown that students tend to guess randomly or blindly choose when they do not immediately identify an answer that they believe is to be correct. I also found that there are specific multiple choice test-taking strategies that students can use chronologically in order to successfully come to a correct answer. The research that I did was mostly on high school level tests by authors of advanced placement tests. And so I kind of picked and choose strategies that were more appropriate to my grade level, and then I ended up choosing 9 test strategies that, used correctly and practiced often, should help students come to a correct answer while taking a multiple choice test. The plan that I designed based on my research was that I wanted to implement some sort of activity on a regular basis that taught students test prep vocabulary in a meaningful context. And then I also wanted to apply these 9 age level appropriate strategies to students in a meaningful context. So what I did was I implemented a test prep word of the day in which students are given a high frequency test vocabulary word, and they explore the definition, how they may have seen it used in their everyday classes, synonyms, other word forms, and they have been compiling a test prep vocabulary packet that they will use throughout the rest of their 8th grade year. I also presented them with these 9 test prep strategies, and we practiced them in class with activities over a course of 3 class periods, and they were encouraged to use their notes on this presentation for everyday tasks that they completed in my class as well as other teachers' classes. Ultimately, I gave the students a 50-point exam that was a cumulative chemistry exam for them. I wrote the test as 50 multiple choice questions, and students were encouraged to use their test prep notes on this exam. However, only about a third of the students did. Those students tended to get higher test scores, and they were able to identify at least 3 questions that they used a specific strategy on. I did have a couple drastically low scores. My lowest score was a 15 out of 50. I did realize that another factor that was a contender in this performance was attitude and effort put in. Some students I don't think are ready to specifically take a test using strategies to break down a multiple choice question. I do think there are some students who are frustrated with the material and did just choose to blindly guess or choose a random answer. In conclusion, I did find that my results were somewhat inconclusive due to time restraints. I learned that test-taking strategies are not something that can be learned overnight, and they do need to be applied over and over again in a meaningful context and across all subject areas. Something that I'll continue to do in the future is continue with the test prep word of the day, as that has become very beneficial, and that students are recognizing more and more confusing words in their everyday work and using their new knowledge as a problem-solving strategy in understanding their materials better. Something else that I would like to do is to discuss test-taking strategies that I have implemented in my classroom with other teachers so that they may be used in different contexts other than in a science classroom.